Thanks very much, and thanks, Katie, for joining us
Thank
today.
you for having me.
So I guess first tell us a little bit about how you first got into gardening. How did you become passionate about it?
Well, my grandparents used to be really keen gardeners, so I really think that's where it came from. They used to live in a back-to-back house with a really tiny yard out the front, and they had container gardens, so there was just containers absolutely everywhere. You know, hanging baskets on hanging baskets and tiered planters, and they absolutely loved it. And one year they entered Leeds in Bloom and won Best Container Garden. So I would kind of go out and water with them and help squish vine weevil with my granddad on an evening. He used to go out with a head torch on a night time looking for vine weevil, and we'd go out and squish those together. So it's a bit of bonding over, vine weevil. So yeah, they were really keen gardeners. So I think that's where it came from. On a Friday afternoon, my mum used to watch Gardener's World. It was Jeff Hamilton at the time. So I'd always watch that with her on a Friday, and I'd always be really kind of taken with usually the scents of flowers was what got me. I always have a really distinct memory of the smell of sweet peas as a child, and the smell of the earth when my mum used to turn it over in the front garden. So I think scents were like my biggest introduction to gardening. And if I'd have taken note then, I suppose I'm never going to do that because I was a kid, but if I'd have known that not every child would have felt like that, when I was older, there was definitely something always there, like a signpost, a little flag always there that I kind of didn't take note of until I was much older.
Oh, that's interesting. But from a very, very young age, you were interested in
I think flowers. Much more than any other child. I didn't have friends that were kind of sticking their head in sweet peas and inhaling them until I thought the scent was going around. I don't think that was a normal thing to do.
Probably not.
I like to do it seemingly with lots of different things. So yeah, it was always there.
You mentioned watching Gardener's World, so who inspires you or inspired you at the time in horticulture?
Well, Jeff Hamilton always did. He was like, your lovely warm granddad, wasn't he? He was just so delightful. I loved him. I loved the fact that he always got his hands dirty and he was always making and doing and cobbling together. I really liked seeing him make things out of nothing. And also these days, I get a lot of my inspiration from Instagram. There's an amazing gardening community on Instagram. So many people from all over the world are posting things about what they've done and what they're doing and what they're passionate about. I think there's so much content there to be had now. Even as an experienced gardener, there's so much you can still learn online by watching other people. I watch an amazing woman in America who is the composting queen. She's absolutely magnificent and she's so passionate about what she does. And then as for kind of garden designers and things now, I think it has to be people like Dan Pearson, who I just absolutely adore. His kind of masterfulness at being able to create these beautiful landscapes that look like they've always been there. He's so talented. So yeah, I think they're my inspirational points.
Interesting. Do you share a lot on Instagram?
I do, but not as much as I should. It's like a part-time job, isn't it? I kind of like looking, but to put the content up there can be quite difficult. So I do share on Instagram. Probably is not as much as my agent would like me to, but I do.
Great. So how did your passion then develop into a TV career, from watching Gardener's World to, taking on a role of your own on TV?
Well, I worked in retail for years. So I worked in retail for maybe 9 years. I used to be a visual merchandiser and a store manager and things like that. And then I had my daughter, so I didn't want to work in retail anymore. Retail is, as lots of people here will know, not an easy industry to work in when you've got a new family. So I started helping out a friend of mine who was a retired gardener. She had one garden that she still looked after. And she said, why don't you come and help me a couple of days a week? So I did, and I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I was like, this is what I want to do. So I went back to night school and I retrained. And then after I'd done 3 years at night school and my RHS qualifications, I went and did a garden design degree because I thought, well, I'd worked in retail and I had lots of transferable skills. So, colour, shape, form, texture, whether you work in fashion or whether you work in gardening, it can kind of cross over. So I did a garden design degree, which took me 4 years part-time. And then when I was in my final year doing that, one of my friends said to me, I've been sent this email by a production company. They're wanting a new TV presenter. So you should go for it. I think the production company had kind of emailed any who was on a gardening course anywhere in the UK. So I thought, well, I've never really kind of fancied TV before, but I'll have a go. So I applied on the Sunday evening, and on the Monday morning I got a phone call asking to go for an audition. And then it was a bit like Gardening X Factor. I had to do 3 different types of auditions. I kind of got narrowed down into a final 5. And then it was only on my last audition that I found out that it was going to be with Mr. Titchmarsh at prime time, 8 o'clock ITV, which I was a bit like, oh my God. So yeah, then that was 12 years ago now.
Wow. So, but fairly early on in your gardening career then?
Yeah, so I was doing my my education, and I was doing garden maintenance at the time. So I was kind of doing a lot of lawns and hedges and bits of planting jobs and weeding for a lot of usually elderly ladies. I kind of had a little garden maintenance job doing that, as well as I was continuing my education. And then in my final year at uni, I applied for the job.
But you're quite outgoing anyway. Did you think you'd make a good TV personality?
Well, I think I am quite chatty. I think just
Hopefully.
generally, yeah. I think it's Mr. Dominic. Hello, lovely to see you. Oh, nice to see you. So yeah, I think it just kind of came naturally, I suppose.
Was there anything over your time being on TV that you were really keen to promote to viewers?
I think just kind of taking the fear out of it. I think a lot of people can still be quite scared about gardening, about going wrong, about making mistakes. But like anything, I think it's really important to just have a go. So it was really important to try and make it a lot more accessible. That's what we try and do on the garden all the time. We usually use the common name for plants over the Latin, because we find that a lot of people can be intimidated about the Latin name of plants. Lots of people just find gardening really daunting. So I think that is the one thing that we're always trying to do on the show, is to show that you can have a go. You don't have to be super knowledgeable. It's just having these little bits of information about right soil, knowing how much sun it gets, and kind of, just being brave enough, really. So I think that's a big thing for us, is to make it accessible.
That's interesting, appealing to all different ages, audiences.
It's gardening. It's not an exclusive club. Whether you're kind of a kid or in your 80s, you should be able to have a go of it. It's not brain science. It's just something that we should all be able to access and all be able to gain joy from.
Absolutely. Did you say 12 years?
Yeah.
So how has Love Your Garden evolved over that time? What changes have you seen?
I think we've evolved definitely in kind of really trying to make the show very inspirational. So when we used to do the show, we used to show a lot more of the garden build, but we've seen now over the years that people actually want to see a lot more beauty in the show. So we kind of have little visits off to different gardens to show inspirational shots on how your garden could look, different themes, how different gardeners tackle their own garden, because there's no kind of one size fits all. Some of the best gardens I've ever seen are the ones that are owned by the most eccentric people, and they've got a theme, and it's kind of all seaside themed or jungle themed.
Yeah.
So gardening can be what you want it to be, and I think people really like to see those inspirational moments on the show where they feel like, really, I'm going to have a go at that. I really want that. I really kind of want a water themed garden or whatever it might be. So we do a lot more of that. And then obviously we're really trying this season, so I've done 9 episodes already this year, and we're really trying to reuse and recycle a lot more than we ever have done before. So, back 10 years ago, we would have definitely taken out old climbing frames and replaced them with newer things, but now we revamp and recycle and reuse, so that's definitely something we're trying to do a lot more of on the show.
Also interesting to know is how gardening has changed over the last 10 years, and I suppose sustainability must be one of the biggest changes you might have seen.
Say that again, sorry.
Sustainability must be one of the biggest changes you've seen in the last 10 years.
Massively, absolutely. And even as a production company, now we are kind of really trying to be a lot more sustainable. So in terms of our travel, in terms of how far the plants come from, using a lot more local suppliers and materials. So yeah, it's a huge drive within the industry, and it's long overdue, to be honest. It should be something we are all, as gardeners, striving to promote, is sustainability and reusing and knowing where our product's coming from. I think it's one of the most important things we can all be doing now.
So it's something you use personally as a garden designer as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I will always try and support my local nurseries. It's really important to support those. Always kind of try and use local materials, recycle materials if you can do. And really, I think we kind of, as gardeners, it's really important to stop being so precious about things. It's important to invite wildlife into our gardens now, so stop being as clean and tidy as we might have been, leave our lawns to grow a little bit longer, leave a leaf pile, all those types of things. We have to start looking at gardening as a holistic whole and stop trying to control nature. It's about how we work alongside nature, and we're part of the cycle instead of kind of having this dominating kind of presence over our natural spaces.
Yeah, it's quite a tough shift, isn't it? Do you think Love Your Garden can help people embrace those
I
kind of
really
gardens?
hope so. I really hope that we can kind of give those little bits of takeaway content that it's like, you don't have to have a massive garden in order to do your bit sustainably. You could make a window box out of an old pallet and fill it full of pollinating flowers. It doesn't have to be a massive space to be able to make a difference. So I really do hope that we inspire people to think of the bigger picture, and to be thinking about how we can do our bit. I like to think of gardeners as kind of like the first line of defence now. And we're a bit bigger than gardeners. I like to call ourselves landscape guardians because that's what we are doing. We're kind of promoting the benefits of not just looking after our green spaces, but the ripple effect that can have on our local communities, on the planet as a whole. So I think it's just really important to kind of, zoom out a little bit and look at how you can play a part in making the natural world a little bit happier and a better place than it currently is at the moment.
Absolutely. Do you think now's probably a good time? Do you think there is still an outdoor living boom after the pandemic from your point of view?
I think so. From what I see from customers, certainly. I mean, I saw in the last year to 18 months, it seems like the outdoor kitchen has been more desirable than like a open plan living area in a house. Rightmove said that a garden was more higher up on the list than a kitchen diner, which that's quite a turnaround in 18 months, isn't it, after the pandemic? So I think that, people are definitely wanting these entertaining spaces. They're kind of wanting space to entertain their friends, somewhere that they can kind of chill out and have their own little space, because that obviously became really important to people in lockdown, that little pocket of green where they could kind of be outside safely. So I think definitely people saw the advantage of that, and I've definitely seen still that uptake in my own clients, that's still really important to them. And then the wildlife thing, people are being a lot more conscious now about their impact on the environment and how they can help.
I think the RHS said there was something like 3 million more gardeners throughout lockdown, which is pretty impressive.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. What a wonderful statistic.
And you mentioned Instagram earlier as well. There's a massive increase in young gardeners now, but how can we keep them engaged now that lockdown's over?
I think it's all about that content and delivering content to them on a platform where they see it. I'm sure there's not so many young people watch gardening on TV, because not a lot of TV is watched now. But if you can kind of still deliver gardening content on platforms like TikTok, I don't have TikTok personally, but my daughter watches TikTok and she sees a lot more gardening stuff. Even though she's not that into it, she will come to me and say, have you seen this really cool gardening thing on TikTok? So it's kind of about approaching them in a space that they exist, I think, is the way to do it. Which, if you're a bit older, like I am, and TikTok frightens the hell out of me, then I might not do it. But if you're brave enough to have a go, the audience is there.
Yeah, I'm not on TikTok either. It absolutely terrifies me. I can't imagine anything worse. Yeah. So you mentioned wildlife-friendly garden. You're seeing more of your customers personally seeing an interest in that.
Yes.
But what would you say are some of the easy wins for a wildlife-friendly garden?
I think definitely things like letting your lawn grow a little bit, at least at the height where the clover comes out, and the odd buttercup. Clover is really important for bees. So definitely doing that. Things like leaving log piles tucked at the back of your borders, things like hedgehogs and earwigs and things to kind of hibernate over the winter, and beetles, because it's all about kind of we can use we shouldn't be using any pesticides and herbicides now, full stop, is my belief. And the way to get around doing less of that is to be patient, because you can't just kind of like stop using those and then expect the wildlife to move in instantaneously. It's not a quick fix. What you can do is kind of aim to, over the next 18 months to 2 years, plant lots of things that are going to encourage those pollinators in, get the birds in, they'll manage a lot of the kind of pests for you, have some water, frogs will eat a lot more slugs and snails than probably you can get rid of by hand. So it's about kind of really trying to encourage that wildlife in, and then hopefully over the space of a couple of years that will really help you manage your pests and diseases within the garden, and just being a lot more relaxed about it. Even us professional gardeners have stuff that dies. because, disease takes over and we have failures, and that's just part of being a gardener. It's not about kind of expecting things to be pristine all the time and perform immaculate all the time. Is I think a lot of the time why people become really disheartened, because it doesn't do that and they think, oh, I can't garden. But that's not the reality. Even things, head gardeners at some of the most prestigious gardens around the world have failures. So it's about kind of embracing it and thinking, how can I kind of improve? How can I make sure this doesn't happen again? And my huge belief is inviting lots more wildlife in, and encouraging your garden to become part of that bigger life cycle. I think it'll be a lot healthier. You'll have healthier soil, healthier plants, and you also get to watch the birds. On a rainy day when you don't want to leave the greenhouse, you get to watch the kind of wildlife come to you. So I think it's all about being part of that kind of, bigger picture again.
We've definitely gotten used to low maintenance gardens which aren't necessarily wildlife friendly.
It's true. Yeah, and it's lots of people want low maintenance gardens. It's one of the things that my clients ask for the most. But it goes back to that right plant, right place, and that makes life so much easier for you. So it's about a little bit of research, maybe speaking to somebody that's a passionate gardener, buying a book. But there are definitely things you can do. It's like anything, a little bit of kind of preemptive work, a little bit of research, right plant, right place, get that wildlife in, and your garden will look after itself a lot more than it might currently do.
And like you say, programs like Love Your Garden can help encourage that to come through and show the easy wins as well.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And put more plants in. I'm always a big fan of just packing in the plants, because the more plants you have, the less weeds you have. And that's just a fact. Like my garden at home, I've probably not gardened it for 3 months because I'm so busy filming, but I've maybe only weeded it twice this year, because it's just so packed full of plants. There's no room for anything else to grow. Lots of people seem to like leaving lots of soil around things, but I'm kind of anti-seeing soil, because where there's soil, there's room for weeds. So double up on your plants, get lots more plants in, you have lots more colour, lots more ground cover, and a lot less weeds.
Interesting, which leads on to my next question. What type of garden do you have personally?
My garden, I would say, really, I would never have thought I'd say this, but I suppose it's quite cottagey. And that comes off the back of the fact that I like all the plants. So therefore, I kind of go against what I preach to everybody else, which is put 3s and 5s and odd numbers of things in, and it creates these lovely drifts and it'll all look uniformed. And I don't do that myself because I want all the plants, so I put them all in, and it's very higgledy-piggledy, and there's lots of colour. My front garden seems to be a lot more kind of designery, I suppose. But then my back garden is utter chaos with all the colours and all the plants. So I'm quite greedy when it comes to my plants. I want them all. So 2 total juxtapositions. The front of the house where people turn up, people think, oh, a gardener must live here, and the back is unapologetic, riotous colour.
Have you always had quite a similar style for your own garden, or you said cottage garden is quite different for you?
Yeah, well, I never thought that would be kind of my style. I always thought it would kind of not be that, but it definitely is, and that's where the love of plants, I think. By putting that many things in all together and kind of mixing it up, it's always going to look quite cottagey. So, I think just by accident, that's how it's happened.
Did your daughter come out in the garden and help out?
Nope, never. She's 14. She couldn't give her monkeys right now. No, she just doesn't get it at all. She likes seeing the wildlife every now and again. We had a blackbird nesting just by one of the windows at the front. She was quite taken with that. She was like the wildlife. But in terms of the gardening, not a chance.
No, 14's not the age for
it.
Nope. You're a brand ambassador for the Bronte Heritage Collection.
Yes.
Just tell us a little bit about, I suppose, your role and why those products stand out for you.
Well, they're a Yorkshire company, which is really nice. So it's really nice to be working with a company that's up north. That's really, really important to me. And also, they have they're really, really pushing their organic feeds. So they've got kind of rose feeds, houseplant feeds, lawn feeds, and they're all organically made. So no pesticides, no herbicides, which is a big part of why I kind of want to be part of it. They also have some really great products that are all made from recycled plastic, which is good. And they're just a really lovely bunch of people. It's an independent company. So it's just been really nice working alongside them. They work out of a beautiful office, up in Skipton. It's absolutely glorious up there. So it's no hardship driving through the rolling green countryside to spend time with a really nice group of people that are doing things, are passionate about producing organic products and things made from recycled plastic. So that's kind of why I'm really pleased to be involved with them.
Sounds like they embrace a lot of the values that you yourself embrace in your own work.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a lot easier to be a brand ambassador for something that you believe in and chat about and things. So yeah, we have a lot of similarities in our kind of beliefs in which direction we think the gardening sector should be going.
Absolutely. So where do you get your inspiration from for your designs, for your own work, for talking to customers?
I think a lot of my inspiration comes from the area that I live. I'm very fortunate. I live kind of 3 miles out of Ilkley. If any of you know Ilkley, it's really beautiful. And I walk up on the moor, and I walk in the woods, and I think that's where a lot of my inspiration and nature comes from. Otherwise, garden visits. I do kind of a lot of garden visits, and sometimes they can be really inspirational. I went to one last year in the West Midlands, and it was so beautiful it made me cry. I must look like such a weirdo. But it was so beautiful. I was so taken by it. I think garden visits are really important to do, especially the little independent places. Instead of the National Trust properties. They are lovely, but they all seem to kind of create the same looking borders and things. I think it's when you meet really passionate plants people that do these amazing things in the small spaces that they have, garden visits are definitely up there, and they're just the natural environment in which I'm fortunate enough to live.
Do you tend to work quite close to where you live? Is the landscape quite similar?
Yeah, it is, yeah. So I'm up on the moor, so it's always windy. Unfortunately, that's the one thing. I have a lovely view, but it's constantly windy. So that is something I've had to learn in my garden. So my previous garden was just a rental property, so I didn't really garden it too much. But this is the first garden that's actually been mine, and it's so windy. I mean, it's rare if it's a still day, it's kind of really novel at home. So that has been a big learning curve for me about what to put in. I've had to put quite a big shelter belt in to kind of protect from some of the wind that comes in. And the first hedge that I put in was a big thuya hedge, and it must have been, I bought them kind of 8 foot high plants each, and put this huge hedge in about 10 metres long. And within 2 weeks, the wind had blown them clear out of the ground. So I had to then build a kind of timber barrier at either side of them to kind of keep them upright, and then tie them to the barrier so they'd stay upright. And now I've been able to remove one side of the barrier because they've been in 18 months and they're well rooted, and they stand up now. But yeah, it was a bit touch and go. And I'd paid a fortune for these plants. I was like, oh, please don't die on me, like constantly shoring them up and replanting them. But it's super windy, and I have a lot of, I did have in the first year quite a lot of damage. But it's not been too bad this year. But in the storm last year in November, I had a couple of pleached trees, like pleached holly out the front, and the storm was so bad it just snapped them clean in half. Yeah, and they were staked and everything. It's wild up there, but pretty. So what are you to do?
Makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and a few learning curves along the way.
Absolutely,
I imagine.
Yeah.
Are there any particular product developments that have sparked your interest? You might have seen some in here or anything.
It's always nice to see the people that are kind of like going back to that sustainability thing, so making things out of recycled materials are always good. I've seen a couple of those about today. I also liked one of the stands up there. They had the big containers in the Pantone colours. Have you seen those? Yeah. They were really nice to see some different colours in the garden. I think sometimes it'd be nice if the gardening world followed a little more for the interior sector, because we can get some amazing interior stuff now. We're really kind of spoilt. The gardening sector, I think, sometimes just lacks a little bit behind, maybe a year or two. It was nice to see some planters in some kind of cool, sophisticated colour palettes, I thought, this year. And then I saw a nifty little thing over there, which was like a wheel tripod thing you attached to the back of your strimmer. So then you could your strimmer was held at the same height the whole time. So you didn't have to kind of stand with it hovering at the same height. I thought that was quite clever. That was over there somewhere if anybody's interested. Yeah.
You'll be about to buy one in a minute.
Yeah, it was really good.
Finally for me then, you mentioned that you've done 9 episodes so far of Love Your Garden.
Yes.
When can we expect to...
They start to go out at the end of summer, so I think September time. And there's some amazing gardens this year, really amazing. The first one we did was like a jungle-themed garden for a family who had a son who was severely brain damaged. He was 23, and both parents had disabilities as well. And they'd not been in their garden as a family for 17 years. So over the pandemic, they were all kind of housebound. None of them could get out. So it was really moving to see them on the last day when we showed them their garden. And they all could get all the way down to the end of the garden where we've put in this amazing pergola and a kitchen for them. And it was like just the best. So yeah, we've done some amazing gardens this year for really deserving people. It's been lovely. So I've got one left to do in 2 weeks in Leicester, in Hinckley. And then, that's the 10 done for the year.
Fantastic. It was great to hear. Look forward to seeing it. Thank you so much for joining us today,
No worries.
Katie.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.